What's up YouTube, Capital G here. So doing I guess a video response to a video that MCO40 made a few days ago where he was kind of degrading Evilswarm and insinuating that the deck is kind of janky and that it has no chance of being meta, or I would really say like even beating the meta, and that it's good in theory, but it's not a very practical deck. Now, for starters, like, let's define meta. To me, personally, I consider meta, and this is pre-World Superstars, which comes out in what, like a week or so. Like, I consider meta 5 decks: Necros, Cleafort, Shadows, Burning Abyss, and Sertellum Knights, because I feel like if you go to a premier event, those are the 5 decks you will see the most common. I still think like the other decks like Spirit Beast and Yosenju and Firefist, they're still really good. They can easily top events. I just consider them rogue. But the thing is, I'm getting a little sick of people trying to make this huge distinction between like our regionals and an ARG. Like, oh, it can't top an ARG. You might be able to top a regionals though. Like, okay, but what's really the difference? Most regionals, I don't know about in your area, but like in my area, the last 2 regionals I've gone to have been 9 rounds. They've been 350 people plus. At the Fredericksburg regional, I went 7-2 with S Knights. I got 16th. So ARG Hartford, Connecticut was the most recent one. That was 9 rounds of Swiss. I think it was 450 people. What would have been the difference between getting 16th place at that ARG and getting 16th place at the regionals? It's the same amount of rounds. You're playing the same exact meta for the most part. So why is it so much more prestigious to top an ARG? I mean, some people say, well, you play anything at a regional. You might run into anything at a fucking ARG. Like, just because Necros is the most commonly played deck and it's considered the best of the format doesn't mean you're going to run into 9 rounds of Necros. Like, that's just, like, that's not even, like, that's beyond common sense. It doesn't mean you're going to play the most played or the most powerful deck 9 rounds. So you're still going to run into the other major decks. So I really don't see that big of a difference. Now, if you're saying a YCS, okay, because, I mean, YCSs have gotten as big as fucking 4,000 people, and in California, they'll have a YCS and it'll easily get 1,200. So that's a whole different ball game. But if you think that this deck can top a regional, then it can top an ARG, because like, practically speaking, they're basically the same thing. All right, so specifically to Evilswarm, and let me try and make my points. This was the version that Greg Williams ran at the ARG Metro, and I actually like it. There are a couple of adjustments that I would have made personally, but like, if you look at Evilswarm, obviously Ophion is your go-to card. Now, it is my personal belief, and I think I've said this in the past, Ophion is going to be a good card forever. I don't know when Yu-Gi-Oh is going to end, but I'm pretty sure at the end of it, Ophion is still going to be a good card. Like, this is a card, this card is like, I mean, you can even compare it to something like Snatch Steal in the sense that it is impossible to power creep Ophion. It's just never going to happen, because as long as Konami still continues to support mechanics such as the Fusion Summon, the Ritual Summon, the XC Summon, and which one am I missing? The Pendulum Summon of high-level monsters, Ophion's just going to be a fucking good card. When you can just tell your opponent, oh, you're running a fusion deck, but you can't fusion any high-level monsters. Deck like Shadows, well, all of our boss monsters are high-level monsters. Ophion obviously can get it the fuck in. Now, are there countermeasures that you can use against Ophion? Well, duh. I mean, of course. There's never been a format where Ophion was uncounterable. Even if you look in, like, the Dragon Ruler Spellcasters format, where those were obviously like the tier 0 decks, but Ophion or Evilswarm were still getting it in, because I think Bunny was at 2 then, and you still saw like Evilswarm players, they were still topping regionals. A lot of them ran they ran EE Virus to kind of like counteract the spellbook deck. But even then, and against like Dragon Rulers, obviously it's shit on the deck, but they still had Blaster, they still had a couple of outs. Now everybody, or what Robbie was saying is, you know, even though Ophion can potentially just be a blowout against Necros, because if you just think about it, how many high-level monsters does that deck attempt to Ritual Summon? Let's see, Decisive Armor, Trishula, Gunir, what else we got? Brio, Valkyrish. You can't summon any of them. That's a pretty big chunk of your deck. You still obviously have Unicorn. That's your countermeasure, right? But if you're telling me, like, literally I can go into a matchup and know that Unicorn and maybe like Casto are your only fucking ways of countering me, I mean, don't you think that that gives me a slight advantage if literally all of those blue cards in your hand are fucking useless and you can't summon them except one Unicorn? And it's not like if somebody puts Unicorn on board, there are no ways to deal with it. If you just look at this deck alone, I mean, the dude has double Dark Hole, Raigeki. I don't know if you guys have read Salamandra, but if you use this guy's effect twice, he gains 600 attack. So he can just, you literally can just normal summon this card, use the effect, and attack over Unicorn. Then that's not a card you have to worry about anymore. And then you obviously have other cards, like if it's your opponent's turn and they summon Unicorn, okay, you have Ring of Destruction. You obviously have triple Mind Crush because every deck ever runs triple Mind Crush, so you can obviously Mind Crush it when they play the Kaleido Mirror. I guess what I'm saying is, if you really only have one great counterplay to playing against like Evilswarm, then I don't really think that I'm in bad shape. I mean, it kind of goes, it reminds me of when I used to play Evilswarm against Shadows. Like I knew that they could set Dragon or that they could set Squamata, but the point is, if I got Ophion on board, I was locking out all your Shadow fusions. I was locking out BLS, your Dark Arm Dragon. There were a couple of countermeasure plays like Felis, and now they've got that Cerberus card, but for the most part, I was really shutting down your deck. And even for your countermeasures of setting a Dragon or setting a Squamata, I would make sure that I had countermeasures, because I would make sure that I had countermeasures to your counters, you know, like Forbidden Chalice, for example. So it's like, if you just look at the main decks, Necros, I would say that, yeah, Evilswarm have a positive matchup. I think if you get Ophion out early enough, that you'll have, I mean, all you really have to do is worry about one card. And I honestly like this deck. I probably would have put in a couple of Phoenix Chains just in case you don't happen to draw the Ring of Destruction, or you don't happen to draw spot removal for the Unicorn that gets summoned or something like that. If you look at Shadows, I still think that this is personally a positive matchup, because once again, none of their fusion spells can be activated. Dark Arm, BLS, none of those cards can be used. I mean, yeah, they have Felis and Cerberus, but those are just a couple of cards you have to play around. And then if you look at Cleafort, I think this matchup got even better. This used to be, like, ironically enough, this used to be, I would say, a negative matchup, because like Skill Drain was way too good against Evilswarm, and they would basically beat down a beatdown deck. But now that the deck is so much slower, and now that the deck can't consistently put Sacrifice on board turn after turn, like that's really not a problem. Like, even if you equip Sacrifice, to one of your monsters and I MST it, and you get a full Pendulum Scale, like, what the fuck are you gonna do with them if I have an Ophion? You can't Pendulum Summon, so I don't care how many scouts you have. You can have 10,000 scouts in your hand. What are they doing? They're not accomplishing anything if you can't Pendulum Summon. Basically, now your deck has become just normal summon once per turn beatdown deck, and I don't think you're gonna beat Evilswarm like that. So personally, I believe like Evilswarm, I'm not going to say that they can be part of the big five, but I think that this is one of the decks where, if you look at the 5 most played decks, I think that 3 of the 5 they have an advantage against. I think that the deck is still consistent enough to easily top regionals or even an ARG. And I don't think you can take evidence of Evilswarm not topping like in previous formats and say, oh, well, that proves that the deck was bad, or that proves that Ophion wasn't good in that format, because nobody's fucking playing the deck. Like, were Sertellar Knights a bad deck last format, or were they just not a highly played deck? Because you can still look up like on Vexakiss's channel where you see Sertellar Knights topping regionals, and I think just like this week or last week in the first batch of regionals, a Sertellar Knight player went like undefeated. So it's not like these decks magically become bad. Losing out a copy of Vanity's Emptiness doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Like, everybody's so, oh my god, we lost Vanities, now anti-meta decks can't play. Come on now, every single player and their mom is main decking 3 Mind Crush. We all know how fucking good this card is against Necros, and personally, I think that this is the type of build that I would run. I would probably get some Fiendish Chains, but you see, this isn't just completely Ophion deck. Like, even if he doesn't open with, you know, Caster or Bunny, and he doesn't have a way to get Ophion on board, he can still open up with a Ryo. That's really good against Necros. He can still open up with a Doom Caliber Knight. If you're going to summon your Manju into that, or you're going to throw your Brio at it, I'm perfectly fine with that. You're basically slowing yourself down. He still has 3 Effect Veilers to stop that Manju play, or 3 Mind Crushes to stop the Kaleido Mirror play. So I don't know. That's just food for thought. I still feel like this deck is really good. And, you know, you look at some of the older decks, people sleep on them. I know just a certain someone who said Firefish was going to be garbage, and then it went undefeated, and they were kind of dick riding it. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, as always.